Okay, so on InDesign, we're going to learn how to do a magazine layout. So the first thing we're going to do is whenever you open up InDesign, yours will look something like this, where you can create a new document or work on any previous documents you were working on before, and you can see mine here. So we're going to press Create New. And on here, they give you some recent ones you've used before. You can go to print and see templates. I would not recommend following them completely. I would use templates to really only get your ideas from. But they also have letter, legal, size, tabloid size, half of a letter, website sizes, and mobile phone sizes. So you can work on any type of size that you need. If you don't have a template or a size already created for you, you can view more by pressing View All Presets. You can go over to this side. This is the side you'll be using the most and need to pay the most attention to. So we're going to go ahead and change our units to inches. So then everything we see here, we understand what it's saying. So we're going to want a letter size, which is 8.5 by 11. If I wanted to make it a different size, I would just change these numbers, and here you can type in it like normal. If you put them in and you realize, oh, it's still on portrait and I'm wanting landscape, you can just click on the landscape and it changes it immediately for you. And then the next thing you'll look at is you can add pages here, adding as many pages as you need. And then you can also, if you choose to, put what page you want to start at. But I would recommend always starting at 1. You will more than likely never need to start at a different page. So columns. So on a magazine layout, most of the time you'll have more than one column, or where you have different columns on the page. So this is where you do it, where you press up, or you can type in here as well, just like the others. For this magazine layout, we're going to do 2. So make sure it says 2. Then on the gutter is the space between the columns. So the gutter size you probably will always use is a 0.1667. Now next is the margins. Margins are the border around the page. So on these, we'll have around a half an inch more than likely, but you can adjust it to whatever you would like, whether it is 0.75, 1 inch, or whatever. Over here you see that this is like a paper clip. This means that they are linked together. So if you adjusted one of these, all of them will adjust. If you just wanted to adjust the bottom and top margins, or just one of these margins, you would just press that and that unlinks them. And that goes with any time you see the sign. Now going down to the bleed. So the bleed is basically how far the document, or how far an image or color block will go outside of the page. So whenever you see a page that the image basically floats off the page and goes all the way to the edge, that means that it has a bleed to it. The only reason why you would have a bleed is to kind of help yourself visualize the borders, or when you're sending to a print shop. Whenever you're sending it to a print shop or another designer to help work on the project, the bleed can come in handy depending on how you send it to them. Most of the time, you'll really only want to get a 1/4 inch bleed. That's really as far as you'll want to go. And those normally will always have a 1/4 inch bleed on each side. But we're going to leave that at 0. So we're going to go ahead and press create. Oh, before we do that, we're going to notice that it says a preview checkbox. If you click the preview, it allows you to view what it would look like right here. And you can see everything that's there. I'm going to change this back to portrait from where I changed it earlier, for example, and then create. So here's our document. Now, this is the toolbar where all of your tools are. This is the typeface frame, and then this is all of your workspace and windows that you'll have open. Now, on some of yours, you may notice, especially if you have a touchscreen laptop, that it does not look like this at all. That's because right here on the top right, it says touchscreen, or it says whatever, it says something similar to that. If it does, you just click on it. See, mine is set as something else. It's set as princess because that's what I titled my own preset. So I have customized my sidebars to what I need and what I like to use. And you can do that as well, and we'll show you that later. But you will always want to have it on advanced if it is not already there. You can use advanced or essentials as well. Essentials is also a really good one that I would recommend. But again, do whatever works best for you. Whatever you get used to and whatever you like to look at, because honestly, this program will become easier as long as you customize it to your likings and what works best for you. So if you do not have this type bar up here, this typography bar, what you'll need to do is press Window, then down to Workspace, and then press Typography. That will bring this typography bar up. So similar to what we learned in Premiere Pro and Photoshop, we have a selection tool. This is your selection tool right here. The short key for it is pressing just the V, or if you're in type mode and you're typing, you press the escape button. For every single tool, you'll notice how it says selection tool, and in parentheses it says V, escape. The letters in parentheses is the short key for it. So whenever you're working on things and going back and forth between the selection tool and the type tool, for instance, it's very beneficial to know those short keys so it makes your life a little easier whenever working on a project. The type tool looks something like this, or it'll be just a power T. Basically, they love Tennessee, and so that's why they chose the power T. Not really, but we can think that. The short key for that is pressing T. Another tool I would like to point out is the eyedropper tool. We'll go in more detail to that, but that allows you to pick colors. It's really beneficial to use. There's a line tool, and then shapes. Shapes are the rectangle, ellipse, and polygon. And these can do a bunch of different things that we'll go over in a second. So we're going to start off by creating this document and using those files, that were in the InDesign Lecture 1 folder. So the first thing we're going to do is for inserting an image. So there's multiple ways that we can do this. The first one is by selecting the rectangle frame tool, which is basically a rectangle with an X in it. And then we will draw this rectangle like this of where we would want a picture to be. You see this X comes up. This is really beneficial whenever you're working on a magazine layout or any type of project and you know there's going to be a picture or a graphic there, but you don't quite have it yet. So it allows you to kind of see where you're going to put it and kind of block that off so you don't put something else there, and it helps you visualize what the final product will look like. So now that I have this box here, we can take from mine's in downloads, the pictures that we're going to be using. I have saved mine in downloads, but I would recommend you adding them in your ALEC 330 file under InDesign, and then underneath there have in-class assignments and label it as such. So we're going to first take the city image. And the way we can do this is just dragging it over and hovering it over this rectangle frame tool, and then we just release and it appears right in this box. Now you can see it's really zoomed in. So the way we fix that is going back to the selection tool. So I'm going to press V, right back on selection tool, and you see how this blue box comes up. That's basically where the frame of the picture. However, if you double click on it, an orange box appears, and that shows the actual size of the image. This is how we can manipulate the image and zoom in and out and adjust it to however we like that works best. There's multiple ways to size it. I'm using my trackpad going in and out like you would to normally zoom in. And then another way to do this is by holding shift and taking one of the corners and moving it to where you want, and it resizes it in a perfect manner so you do not stretch or thin out the image in any way. So now you see that I've fit to the frame of where I like it, and then I'm just going to click and move because you see that little hand that appears, and I'm going to frame it to where I like it and crop to where I want it. So I'm going to go to about right here. That's how I've done that. You can also, and then you double click and it comes back. This circle right here is where you can grab if you want to adjust it again up and down wise, and that's just an easy way without having to double click to do that. Now the next way to do this is, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this to show you how another way, is by holding this city image, and then where it becomes my mouse, I just unclick and then it becomes my mouse again in a larger form, and then I'm just going to draw kind of where I want this frame, and here it is. It appears like this. Now you see that this takes up a lot of the page, and I don't really want that, so I can take this blue box frame and adjust it to where I want it again, and this doesn't do anything to the picture besides just manipulate the crop. Then I don't really want that much sky showing, so I'm going to move it up a little bit to kind of get more of the skyline as the highlight and the reflection in the water. So there's the way you add your pictures. So now we're going to do the header of this magazine layout. So I am going to select the type tool, and then I can just draw a box like a rectangle, and there's my text box, and we're going to title this Taking a Break from Work. I'm just going to type this in. Now here we can adjust this however we want, just like how you would in Microsoft Word. You can adjust the font, the size, all of that jazz, and even more. So up on the typography bar up here is where you can adjust. You can see all of your fonts. Remember that since you purchased the Adobe Cloud, you have access to the thousands of fonts that are on Typekit. You have about 100 downloads, and you can download 100 different fonts with your cloud subscription. So you can just press that button right there, and it'll take you to Typekit for you to see more. So I'm going to choose Gotham because I like the way it looks. Now right underneath it, there's this bar that says book right now. For mine, this is how you would adjust the thickness of it, or thickness or thin of it. So where you would have normally put bold, this is where you find that. Now there's most of the time more options for these fonts now, because there's italics, different thin, to have very thin, extra light, and then black, which is the thickest, and then bold, that's a little less thick. Then we can also adjust the size, and I'm going to go for probably about 24, maybe 30. Nah, let's do 24. And we're going to finish with that. So I'm going to make this font color white because I don't really want it to be black on this with this as the background. So the way to change the color is over here. Right kind of in the middle of the typography bar, a little bit to the right, there's the power T with the black fill. Now this arrow next to it gives some already preset colors, and so I'm going to choose white. But if my color was not already there, I can double click on the square and I get the RGB color space view. This is where I can adjust all the colors, put in codes like I mentioned before, and like Dr. Liao has mentioned before, each brand has codes, and every color has a code. CMYK and RGB is what you will be using the majority of the time. CMYK is for internet and electronic media, and RGB is for print media. So anything that you would need to print, or it goes for pictures as well, you will always want to have your colors in RGB. And if it's for online, make sure your colors are in CMYK. I mentioned that UT's is for C is 0, M is 50, Y is 100, and K is 0, and that gives you UT orange. That's just an example. 4H also has these colors too, which will be sent out in that branding guide. So now that my text is white, and you can't see it now clearly because it's on a white background, I am going to want to move it over onto the picture to where I like it. So these little, if you notice, there's these purple and pink border lines. This is what helps you see your margins and gutter. So it outlines the margins over here in the gutter, and you'll always want to kind of keep your words within the margin. So then you make sure you're not cutting anything off. So as you notice, this text box is really big and it takes up way too much room and doesn't really hug this title. It's important to make sure your boxes hug your text or image as tight as possible. Because of how many items that you'll have on here, it'll be easy to accidentally overlap the boxes and not have trouble selecting what you're trying to select. So an easy way to make sure that your box is snug and as small as it can be is by going to the bottom right corner and where you can get the double arrow and double click, and it automatically takes it to as small as it can be, and then it's perfect and eliminates any problems ahead. So we're now going to do a byline and create the same exact thing. Again, I'm going to change the font to Gotham, and then I'm not going to use bold this time. I'm going to use medium. I'm just going to align it right here, right underneath it. And then it's perfect. So now we're going to talk about creating a background box, because as you can see, it's kind of hard to really read the title and byline on this. So to create a text box, or to create a colored box, we're going to use the rectangle tool. So if you'll select the rectangle tool, and like with Photoshop, if your tool does not appear, these little arrows mean that there's more tools underneath it. So you'll just hold it for a second and they'll have the rest of the tools. So select the rectangle tool and then just draw a box around your title and text frame and your byline. So now the box doesn't have any fill in it. So just where the same place that we selected or changed the color for type, we're going to change the color for this box. If it has a white box with a red line in it, that means that there's no color in it. Same for this box underneath it. The box underneath it is the stroke, which is basically the outline. Most of the time you won't really ever have a stroke on anything unless you're wanting the outline of a box. So we want to make sure that it matches the colors that go along with this photo to be cohesive and the design to look good. So now I'm going to zoom in and we're going to use the eyedropper tool that I mentioned before. This eyedropper tool will allow me to select a place on this photo and match the colors that go along, and it'll allow basically InDesign will show you some colors that go well with this. So actually, instead of selecting the eyedropper tool, we're going to hold it for a second and select the color theme tool. It's basically the exact same thing. This is the one that gives you the color options. So after select that, we're going to select somewhere in the water. So I'm going to select right here. As you can see, it pops up with these swatches. I can add this to my swatch bar by pressing this button right here. So I want to make this box match this orange. So I'm going to select the orange. This is a time when you can use the eyedropper tool as well to click on anything that you would want to be like, if you wanted to match the exact blue in the sky, you could click on the sky and then click on the box and it'll bring it to you. But we're going to go back to the color themes tool to bring up the swatches. and select the orange and then select the box. Now I just added this swatch to my color this color theme to my swatches, so you can see them right here under folders called Colorful Theme 2, and then here they are. So I want to make it orange, so I just made it that orange. And I accidentally added a border here, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off by pressing none. As you see, the box is over the words. So the way to fix that is by clicking on the box, right-clicking, and pressing arrange. So in arrange, you can send, right now it only says send backwards or send to back because it's on top. Now, if we said send backward, that just means it's going to send one step back and one thing's going to be over it. Now, and then if we said send all the way to the back, then that means it's going to make it the very last object in the line. So we only want this to go behind two things. So we're going to select send backwards and then go back to arrange, send backwards again. Now you can see how bring to front and bring forward come in. It's the same exact concept. Because this is a little too thick and we don't want it that aggressive, we are going to lower the transparency of this box by going back up to where the colors were, and where this small square that looks like it has checkers in it, that's the transparency. Right now it's at 100%. So we're going to lower that to about 63 to 58, in that kind of range, to where it lets you see some way through and it's not as harsh. Now, one unique thing and really cool thing about InDesign is that it allows you to preview what you do, and that you can do it from over here on your tool space bar. So right now we're in normal mode, which basically means your editing mode, where it looks like this. But this box next to it is for preview. If you click that, it allows you, it takes out all the borders and edges and blacks out anything that goes over the edge, so you can view what it'll look like if it was printed. An easier way to do this is just by pressing W, and it goes interchangeable. Now we are going to add the story now. So by doing multiple text frames. The way that you can add more text frames is by doing the exact same type tool. And we're going to draw a rectangle that fits in these borders of the margin and gutter. And then we're going to draw another one right next to it of the same size to be in the second column to go the rest of the story. Now, if I was writing a story and I just wasn't ready to write it in yet, the way that we could fill in this area is by putting placeholder text. So we're going to click in the box and then right click and say fill with placeholder text. Now it fills it with gibberish. Basically this just allows you to kind of get a visual of what your layout would look like whenever you're working on a project and you may not have the story finished yet. I would always recommend writing your story in Windows because, and basically my Windows Microsoft Word, because that way you'll have a little bit more of a consistency in your writing, and it's something that you're used to and you've been using for years. So you're probably more comfortable writing your story in there. It also automatically has spell check and grammar check to allow you to do that extra step of making sure that your writing is correct and in the correct formats. The way that you can turn on this spell check right here is by going to type If you ever forget where anything is, like I just did, then you can press help and type it in, and it finds it for you. So I've typed in spell and all these different options. So dynamic spelling is where we're going to. So it's actually under edit. And then you can go to spelling and dynamic spelling. So I have my dynamic spelling on and autocorrect on. That's how, if you click it on and off. So now that I've unclicked it, all the red lines are gone. So now it's not checking my spelling. Now if I click it back, they appear back again. This is just an extra step to make sure all of your typing is correct, especially when it comes to headers and bylines and titles, considering you probably will not write those short sentences and those few words in Word. So moving on, we're going to delete the placeholder text because one important thing is you never want to leave the placeholder text. So when you use it, make sure you delete it. And not replace, and make sure you replace it with your text. So we're going to backspace that. So now if you'll pull up your story text document that was in OneDrive, and we're basically just going to copy all of this and paste it into this box. So we're going to select Command A or Control A, whatever computer you're using. That basically means select all. You can use that short key in InDesign as well. We're going to copy it and then select inside this box and paste it. Now we notice here that there's this red little box that has a plus in it. That means that our text, there's text that is not showing in this box and is covered up because there wasn't enough room. We're going to click that in 1 second to basically bring the rest of this text over to this box. That's called connecting a box. If you did not want to, if you did it beforehand, the way you would do that is by, in that exact same spot, there will be basically a normal box that has no X in it, and you would click that, and your mouse would have this little icon attached to it, and you would be able to click on another text box to connect them. But we're going to click this red box. That text comes up, and we're going to click to this new text box that we already had planned. This allows you to make sure that you have your boxes together, and then if I happen to want to delete this sentence, everything would flow together and there wouldn't be that much change. So I'm going to undo that. Now, if you notice, there's some hyphenations that are happening over here, and we do not want that. So we're going to open the paragraph tool on the side, and mine's already up, but if yours is not, go to Window, and it is under Type and Tables. And you'll just go and select it, and it checks, and it'll pop up. So on here, this is where you can adjust the alignment of the text and where it hyphenates. So if you see hyphenate is already checked, more than likely it will always be checked. For some unknown reason, it thinks it's smart. So we're going to uncheck it, and it unhyphenates everything. It actually did on this one, so make sure you go ahead and select all just in case, and make sure it's unchecked. Also note that this is a reminder of the short keys. So, and whenever you're typing, if you try to use the short key to go to the selection tool of V, obviously a V will appear. That's whenever you would use the escape button, and it automatically goes back to the selection tool. So now we're going to talk about drop caps. Drop caps are whenever the first letter of a story is larger and takes up more lines than the rest of it. This kind of just shows the reader where the beginning of the story starts. So the way we do that is we are going to highlight the P and then go up to the typography bar up at the top, and over on the far right, there's 3 lines over here that I'm hovering over. I'm going to click that and then go down to drop caps and nested styles. By clicking that, we can adjust the lines. You really only want to stick from 2 to 3 lines. Anything more than that can be a little excessive unless that's what the design you're going for. So in this case, we're going to do 2. We don't really need to touch anything else on here, so just only really worry about the lines. And then press OK. You can also preview it by checking this, and it changes it over in the back, and you can see it in the background. So now it has changed to P. Now, keeping it at black is kind of boring, so we're wanting to use the color orange that we used for this box to kind of keep that consistency. So I'm going to go back up to that color changing and change that. Select orange, enter, and we're good. Now it's orange. I'm also going to go ahead and change the typography so we can keep the same font. So I'm going to use Command A again to select all of it. Go up to my font, select Gotham, book, and then I'm also going to change the font size to about 11. For magazine layouts and stories and newspapers, more than likely you can get away with using a size 11 font. You don't really want to go smaller than that, but you can use 11 because more than likely people can read it. Now, to end the story, we're going to use this thing called a dingbat. A dingbat is the thing that ends, it shows where the story is ending. So we had you download the typeface called State Base. That's one that we already downloaded. On here, whenever you download it, make sure you just install the font to make sure it appears up here. If it does not appear in your type list, just go and install the font from your downloads. So the state of Tennessee is a lowercase p. In your stories you'll be using in this class, that's the only letter you need to know and the only state you'll be using. So just go ahead and type a lowercase p, highlight it, and then change the state. You change the font to state face, and it appears as a P, or as the state of Tennessee. We're also going to change the color back to the orange like we did before. So I'm going to go up here and select the orange. And then Tennessee is orange, and it's and it looks cohesive, and it goes with the theme. Each state has their own letters, so you can play with it, and if you ever forget that Tennessee is a lowercase p, just start hitting letters until you find it. There's 50 states, so there's 2 combinations for each letter, so make sure you do capitalize and lowercase because it is case sensitive. So now we're going to talk about adding a picture in the middle of this. So there's 2 ways you can do that again. Remember that you can use the rectangle frame tool where you can draw the rectangle and then place the picture inside of there. But I'm going to just drag the photo from my downloads. So if you pick drinks, and if I click just once without drawing the frame, that would basically just insert the photo as large as it is, and you can resize it from there, or you can just draw it in a rectangle like I have been doing. And then it's perfectly aligned. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the selection tool, and then I'm going to line it up. So now if you see that when I have it aligned in the center, this pink line appears. That's automatic guides that just help you see where the center is and help you align it to where it looks best. So this is where I want it, and as you can see, it's over all these texts. So the way we fix that is by selecting the image and then going to text wrap. So you can find that again under window, and it's under one of these. So you just find it under window and select it, and it pops up. So under text wrap, you'll see that it has that there's no text wrap right now. Now, if you go over to the next one, it means wraparound bounding box, and that's what we're going to use. So I'm going to select that. And as you can see, the words are pretty much on the border of this photo, and it looks off and weird. So the way we can change that is by using and changing the margins of the text wrap. So we're going to start off on the sides, and again, you can see how they're unlinked, and now they're linked again. More than likely, you want to keep these unlinked because the top can become a little weird. So going to the left, we're going to want this on about a 0.125, and then we're going to do the same on the right side. And then on the top is the only part you really need the text wrap on, and I'm going to just go up one step to 0.0625. Now you can see that the inconsistency of the ending of the lines is kind of throwing off the text wrap of this picture. So we're going to select all of the text again, go back to paragraph, and select the justify with last line aligned left. And that makes it look more cohesive and more attractive to the reader. So now if you find that you do not, that you need more columns whenever you're working on a document and you had already created it, you will go over to pages. Now on pages, there's several different things on here. If we had more than one page, you would be able to see all of them listed here. You'd be able to select whichever ones you want. You also see how there's a none and a master. So on a magazine, every single page always has like a page number and often a some type of logo or a title or a magazine name, issue, that kind of thing. That's what would go on the master. So then every page would have it. And then if a page did not if one page did not need to include the master information, then you would take the none, hold it, and drag it over to the page that you're wanting it on. And then over the master, it's important to make sure you do not delete these master pages. It's really hard to delete them, but make sure you don't. And also make sure that whenever you're working, you always have the page that you're wanting to work on selected. Because if you do something on the master page and you're working on the master page, then it'll be applied to every single page, and it basically just creates a headache for you going on in the future of the rest of your design. If you want to add another page, you can go to the bottom of that little panel, and where it looks like a paper with the corner turned up, and if you hover over it, it says create new page. You can press it, and it adds another page. Don't do what I just did, because I accidentally just created a master, and that's what happens whenever you select. You have master selected. So again, make sure you select your actual page and select it. And now there's a second page and then a third page, and it sets up like a magazine. If you want to adjust your columns, you'll go to layout, margins and columns, and then adjust it however you choose. To add more columns, adjust the gutter and margin. So that's all you really need to do on this half, and we'll continue learning more about InDesign later on.